everybody, it's Laura, and welcome to the class of 74. We're into our season finale today, episode 25. Mind you, I wouldn't go back and be a teenager for any amount of money because it is so god-awful. All the insecurities, all the indecisions, all the feelings of helplessness about what's going on, all that stuff. I wouldn't go through that again. But it's fun to visit, I'll tell you that. I love the class of 74, and I am writing season 2. So, where we left off, as you may recall, Cynthia's at school, and she's trying to find Mimi, because it's Mimi's first day back, and she wants to see how she is. But on the way to the cafeteria, good old Teddy Hamilton, remember him, has taken her arm and said, "We need to talk," in such a way that she knows it can't possibly be good. So that's where we are. We're with Cynthia being dragged off by Teddy, and she has no idea what he wants to talk to her about. Sit back, enjoy, and I'll see you on the other side. Hope you like it. I think you will. Episode 25. Unexpected information, unexpected events. Cynthia was acutely aware of Teddy's grip on her arm. There would be no veering from the path he chose for them. "I'm supposed to meet my friend who broke her nose," she told him. "It's her first day at school, and I want to make sure she's okay." "This will only take a minute," he said. He steered her out the door towards D wing and then pulled her up several steps on the grassy slope. He turned to face her but maintained his grip on her arm. "You need to tell your friend Evan Whitaker to lay off Victor Wronski." Cynthia looked down at the hand on her arm and thought, "Don't say it." But she raised her eyes and said it anyway. "Is that a threat?" Teddy looked genuinely shocked and suddenly seemed to realize, in comparison to Cynthia, how hugely big and strong he was. "No," he said, recoiling as he released her arm. "I should have said please, so I'm saying it now. Please talk to him because Vic has to play on Friday or I'll spend the entire game on my ass." "What if he breaks someone's neck?" she asked. She needed to shut up. She wasn't supposed to be talking about this. "He won't. Vic's father's got somebody with him 24 hours a day to make sure of it." "Oh, that was interesting." "You should talk to Evan yourself." "Katie says he listens to you." "You're the captain of the football team, Teddy. He'll listen to you." "You guys are looking awfully serious," a female voice said. It was Didi, laughing, of course, blowing a pink bubble and popping it on her way up to stand with them. "Hi, Dee," Teddy said. Dee? Although they ran in different circles, they seemed to know each other rather well. Of course, Cynthia didn't really know what circles Didi ran in. Thus far, she had only met the sullen boy that was in the car when Didi picked her up in the rainstorm. Not Fred, and that pisser elixir kid Henry, which, if she stopped to really think about it, made her feel a little afraid for Didi. "What's the matter, T? Don't have enough 10th grade girls in your collection yet?" Cynthia was astonished at Didi's attitude. She didn't seem to be the least bit intimidated by who Teddy was. "I was asking Cynthia's help on something." Didi was not smiling. "Damage control for Saturday night?" "It wasn't how it looked, Dee." "It looked pretty bad to me," Didi said, blowing another bubble and popping it, "in the back of a van with 2 dead drunk 15-year-old girls." "Look," he said, glancing around and then lowering his voice, "I might have pushed Katie away when she started puking on me. But other than that, I swear to God I never touched either one of them." That's what Katie had said. But Cynthia had also gotten the impression that Katie had seen Betsy having sex with Teddy. "Betsy was your date, right?" "No, she was Steve Ponborough's date." "Steve Ponborough," Cynthia said skeptically. He moved like 2 years ago. He was in Brighton this weekend to pick up a van, the van that was at the drive-in. I thought you swapped your car for the van, Cynthia said. I had nothing to do with the van. Teddy sounded frustrated. I was only at the drive-in because a friend wanted to borrow my car for the first movie. For the first movie, Didi said. Why? Because, Cynthia jumped in, Teddy bought the Mustang from Mr. Smith. You know, the driver's ed teacher. And Saturday was his anniversary, and 7 years ago, he proposed to his wife in that car at the Norwalk Drive-In. Cynthia enjoyed seeing Teddy's amazement that she knew all that. That's so sweet, Didi said. Yeah, well, he's a good guy, Ted began. No, I meant it was sweet of Mr. Smith to be so sentimental. Then Didi laughed and swatted Teddy's arm. I'm just giving you a hard time, T. That was very nice of you. Teddy, a student called. Come on if you want to see the play. Just give me 5 minutes, Teddy called back. Okay, so I was killing time during the first movie, and I ran into Steve in the men's room. He was all excited because he got his license, and he had come to town to pick up the van he bought, and he wanted to show it to me. So I walked over there with him. He told me he brought Betsy, but when we reached the van, there was no sign of her. Then Steve got nervous and asked me if Betsy had perhaps been drinking, would I report her? You're supposed to report the cheerleaders, Cynthia asked. I'm supposed to tell Suzanne, but Betsy'd get kicked from the squad, so I told Steve I wouldn't tell on her. Then he admitted Betsy had been drinking a lot and said he better go look for her before something happened to her. Didi popped another bubble. So how many guys have you reported? Not many. I try not to go places where they might be drinking, he said, so I don't have to see him. If he did, Cynthia said, he'd lose some of his best players. He was just asking me to persuade Evan not to press charges against Victor Wronski so he can play in Friday's game. Didi looked at Teddy. I thought he was in the nut house. They released him. His father's insurance wouldn't cover treatment, Cynthia added. Look, Dee, Teddy said, starting to look a tad panicky. A scout's coming down from Dartmouth for Friday's game. If Vic doesn't play, I'm going to be on my ass the entire game. Didi looked at Cynthia. It sounds like it's a big deal to him. It's everything, Teddy cried, staggering back a step. I've been working my ass off all my life for this chance. Cynthia felt bad. It's probably true. She had never devoted herself to any one thing, but she imagined Teddy had put in all the time. Just look at the size of him. You should call Evan yourself and talk to him, she urged. Tell him about the Dartmouth scout. He thinks because he knocked 2 of Wronski's teeth out, he won't mess with him again. Whitaker did that? I thought that happened to Vic in the loony bin. Cynthia thought Taryn Meadows really needed to do a better job on their public relations. Teddy called the ritzy hospital the loony bin, and Didi called it the nut house. Finish about Saturday, Didi urged him. Yeah, okay. Look, Steve went to find Betsy, and he never came back. What? I'm not kidding. He never came back. His van was still sitting there when I left around 12:30. Wait, Cynthia said. Back up and explain about Katie falling out of the van and you coming out of it with Betsy with no shirt on. Oh, God, he said. He looked past them and called to somebody. I still need a minute. More quietly. So Steve went off and I stayed at the van. Then Betsy showed up and she freaked out when she saw me. Because she thought you'd get her kicked off cheerleading, right? Right. She was 3 sheets to the wind, and she started crying and carrying on. And I tried to convince her I wasn't going to report her. But then, oh, God, he took a step back, and when he stepped forward again, his face was red. She tried to do something really inappropriate to me. Inappropriate how? Didi asked, blowing and popping another bubble, riveted to this story. So is Cynthia. I don't want to say, Teddy said. I mean, she was drunk, right? She didn't know what she was doing. But when I told her to cut it out, she got mad and then she ran off again. Ted, a student called. I don't have all day. Just one more minute and I'm there, he answered. Well, where did she go? Didi asked. I have no idea. I sat in the front seat of the van and I waited for Steve to come back. Then I heard the back door of the van open and 2 people climbed in. I said, Betsy? And she said, Steve? And I told her no, Steve hadn't come back. And then Betsy laughed, and then I heard another girl laugh. And I recognized the laugh immediately. It was Katie. She was drunk as a skunk, too. And she and Betsy flopped down on the blankets back there. He looked first at Didi and then at Cynthia. I couldn't just leave them there. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't leave them there with how drunk they were. I kept thinking Steve would come back, but then the girls started fooling around back there. Cynthia and Didi looked at each other. You mean fooling around? Didi asked. With a jolt, Cynthia remembered how Katie's dress had been unzipped. Yeah, I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there until Katie started groaning about how everything was spinning, and she felt so sick, and Betsy yelled at me to hurry up and help her get Katie outside, and I was just in time for Katie to throw up all over me. Forget it, Ted, the boy called. I'm leaving. Coming. Look, I gotta go. You guys know what happened after that. You took Katie away, and Betsy just sat there and cried her eyes out for hours. As soon as I got my car back, I took Betsy home. I swear I didn't touch either one of them, and if I ever see Stephen Pondbrook again, I'm going to wring his neck. He was very upset. Didi said, I believe you. Thank you, he said, touching her arm as he moved away. Then he pointed at Cynthia as he walked backwards. See if you convince her I'm not the monster she seems to think I am. Cynthia's mind was reeling. No wonder Betsy hated her. She probably thought she knew about what she did Saturday night and was terrified she'd tell somebody. Didn't matter how great-looking Betsy was. If word got around she made the moves on another girl, she'd be shunned, taunted, and made fun of because it was absolutely, positively unthinkable behavior in Brighton, period. Her life would be over. What about Katie? Cynthia didn't think she was that way. But Katie did sometimes give off a vibe that made Cynthia feel uncomfortable. Maybe she should ask Annabelle if she ever got that vibe from her. But Cynthia knew Annabelle would say no because at heart, Annabelle was still a good Catholic girl who didn't believe sexual vibes between girls could possibly exist. Cynthia was so confused. She looked at Didi. What do you think Teddy meant when he said Betsy tried to do something very inappropriate? A blowjob, maybe. Oh my God, Cynthia said, turning away. Then she came back. Really? That's what you think? Didi shrugged. Did girls in Brighton? Cynthia wondered. No, they can't do that. She wouldn't do that. That was something out of Myra Breckenridge. She left Didi to go find Mimi. She found her holding court with 5 girls at a table just outside the kitchen in the cafeteria. She still looked radiantly beat up and gave Cynthia a little wave with a drumstick. Chicken today, peas and carrots in rice, and something brown Cynthia couldn't identify, so she opted for a tuna fish sandwich with lettuce and a carton of milk. She sat down at Mimi's table and tried to join the conversation, but her mind was elsewhere. Mimi and Kathy Smith were talking about starting a fashion club. She smiled and waved to a couple of people and wondered if any of those girls had ever given a boy a blowjob. I was hoping you were here, Katie said, swooping in. Annabelle said she thought you had lunch now. Where is she? The library. She looked across the table. Hi, Mimi. Nice to see you. Thanks, Mimi said. Then Mimi went around the table to introduce everyone to Katie, which was nice. When that was over, Katie leaned close to Cynthia's ear to say, "Do you want to spend the night at my house on Friday?" "No," was Cynthia's immediate thought. "Friday's the football game." "Oh, I know. Teddy said he'd bring us home after." "Us?" "Well, me. But he won't mind if you come." At this point, Cynthia had no idea who Teddy Hamilton really was. Katie leaned close again. "Annabelle's coming too." "Oh, great. Yeah, sure, that would be fun." "It's a date then," Katie said, delighted. "I'll tell Annabelle." The noise in the cafeteria suddenly diminished, and Cynthia looked around to find the cause. The cause was moving right behind her. Principal Mullen was showing a black teenage boy the way to the kitchen. He was taking every eye in the place with him. Cynthia guessed the boy was around her age. He was wearing a short-sleeved white Oxford shirt, well-fitting purple bell-bottoms, a wide leather belt, and white high-top sneakers, new ones. He was tall and thin, and his hair, his hair! His dark brown hair was going to be a sensation, she knew. It was short, but a real afro. It wasn't just tight and frizzy like Bingo Thompson's hair. An afro at Brighton High. Wouldn't he be a coup for the fashion club, Mimi said. The principal guided the boy to get a chicken and rice lunch, and when they emerged, he scouted the cafeteria, his eyes coming to rest on Gary Stone's table, and he walked the boy over. Gary stood up to shake hands, and the boy self-consciously put his tray down to comply. Then he sat down and tried to eat lunch, with 200 pairs of eyes on him. Dr. Mullen laughed. Everyone in the cafeteria was whispering now. The boy was looking straight down into his plate. Who could blame him? He had a nice face and beautiful skin, not very, very dark. She wondered where he was from. She watched as 2 junior boys walked over to introduce themselves to him, and Cynthia smiled to herself. This was the best part of Brighton, the friendly kids, but she wondered how long it would be before someone did something mean. She did not envy this young man. Before leaving for chemistry, Cynthia told Mimi about Phil's first practice and asked if she wanted to go and watch for a while. She said sure. They agreed to meet after school in the smoking area, and then Cynthia set off for chemistry. She arrived before Betsy did and headed for the back row. Peter Cully came in shortly after her and sat next to her. When Betsy came in, she opted for a seat in the front and never even looked in Cynthia's direction. Looking at her perfect profile, Cynthia wondered if she really had tried to give Teddy a blowjob, or had Didi been exaggerating. Inappropriate could mean trying to kiss Teddy on the mouth, she thought, or kissing his ear. As much as she might like to review the possibilities of Betsy's sexual urges, Mr. Flugler seemed fiercely determined to ingrain the periodic table of the elements in their heads. It was, according to him, the key to unlocking everything in the universe. Oh, is that all? Cynthia thought, opening her notebook to a clean page. She couldn't find her favorite pen. Peter Cully was writing with a cool-looking cartridge pen. She liked how the ink flowed out of it. Mr. Flugler picked up a wooden pointer with a black rubber tip and strolled under a huge black and white chart thing on the wall that had like 100 boxes in it. Each box contained 1 or 2 letters, a number at the top and a number at the bottom. The elements are organized on the chart by their atomic number, he said, tapping the number at the top of the box that contained the letters F-E. The atomic number is the number of protons in the nucleus of an atom and is what determines the element's chemical properties. The atomic number, he tapped it again, of iron is 26. Why isn't the abbreviation IR or IN, a kid asked. Because most of the early scientific writing in Europe was done in Latin, Mr. Flugler said, and the Latin for iron is ferrum. So FE is its abbreviation. Why can't we learn this in English? Because in the last century, scientists decided it would be beneficial if scientists around the world used the same abbreviations, ones derived from the element's name in Latin, because this would create an international language the scientists could use to share their work. But the abbreviation for mercury is HE, a girl's voice said, which is from the word hydrogerum, which is Greek, not Latin. Cynthia peered around to see who it was that said that. It was Abigail Gray, who was really, really smart. She wanted to be a doctor someday. Quite right, Mr. Flugler said. Hydrogerum is Greek for liquid silver. Mercury is an element that was written about by the Greeks before Latin even existed. So when Latin appeared as a language, the name remained unchanged. Cynthia looked at Peter's notes to see how he spelled hydrogerum, and it was the same as hers. Yay! She had no idea what was going on, but her notes were tip-top. Why do some elements only have one letter? Dwayne Gulliver asked. If Cynthia remembered correctly, Dwayne wanted to walk on stilts in the circus when he grew up. At least that's what he said in second grade. She wondered where his aspirations lay now. Concentrate, she told herself. You mean like carbon? Mr. Flugler asked Dwayne, tapping the big C on the chart. Carbon was simply the first element written about that started with the letter C, he explained. After that, they needed to use two letters, like for calcium or chlorine. Then he said they needed to move this along, so please everybody hold their questions until later. Now, he said with a sweep of his pointer, you might ask, how are the 103 elements organized on the periodic table? Well, Cynthia wouldn't ask. Simply put, each column represents an element group. Elements that share similar properties because they share the same number of valence electrons. Does anyone know the significance of valence electrons? A hand shot up. They're the outermost electrons, the ones that bond with other elements, a boy said. That's right, Mr. Flugler said, surprised and pleased. He moved behind his desk to look down at his attendance book. And you are? Jeremy Constant. Mr. Flugler ran his finger down his book, looking puzzled. That's funny. I don't see your name here, Jeremy. Are you supposed to be in this class? Wordlessly, Jeremy stood up and carried a piece of paper to Mr. Flugler. Okay, yes, I see, but the name did not land here, Mr. Flugler said, tapping his book. Well, never mind, Jeremy. We'll figure it out later. Sit down and tell me how it is you know about valence electrons. My grandfather worked on the hydrogen bomb, Jeremy Constant said. Whoa. Well, that topped anything Mr. Flugler could say. Interesting, Mr. Flugler said. Perhaps we can speak briefly after class. Then he abandoned his valence electron to announce how pleased he was the school had purchased a beautiful, color-coded periodic table of the elements that would make it much easier for the students to see how the elements were grouped. He walked over to the lab table and hefted a heavy-looking oblong box in his arms and carried it to the front of the room, put it on his desk. He looked around and said, Peter, Cynthia, and Jeremy, will you come up here, please? I want you to hold up the new periodic table of the elements so everyone can see it. They made their way to the front, and Mr. Flugler placed them at intervals around the box. Then he lifted the oblong lid and put it to the side. The fold is on my side, Cynthia, so you need to open the first fold from your side." The classroom door opened then, and Dr. Eagleton poked his head around the door. He asked to speak to Mr. Flugler. Mr. Flugler went out to the hall. Cynthia touched the color-coded periodic table. It was made out of some kind of coated fabric. She tried lifting the first fold with both hands. The motion reminded her of the steam press she used to see in a weird commercial on Channel 9. She tried lowering the fold and lifting it again. She couldn't resist. She grabbed a white lab coat and laid it down in front of her. With both hands holding the first fold, she battered her eyes at the class until she got their attention. "Now you can replace ironing drudgery," she announced as she slowly lowered the fold over the lab coat, "with pressing pleasure." The kids recognized the weird commercial and started laughing. "Thanks to the new Spartan Pressomatic." All right, Mr. Flugler said, returning to the front of the class. He took the lab coat out of the periodic table and tossed it aside. "Maybe you should return to your seat, Cynthia." "With pleasure," Cynthia said with a curtsy. After class, Cynthia found Betsy waiting for her in the hall. "You were pretty funny," she said. Then she turned around and walked away towards the intersection. Huh. Well, it was a start, Cynthia thought. She took a different route to her locker, out A wing and across the parking lot into C wing, to pick up her gym suit, socks, sneakers, old deodorant, and towel. After study hall, she had PE. Then she went into the cafeteria to do as much homework as she could. Just before the end of the period, she went outside to have a quick cigarette before walking up to the gym. Their gym teacher, Miss Goodhart, greeted them in the locker room. She was nice enough, but she was like 3 feet tall. Her outfit strongly hinted she was a tennis lover. White shorts, white polo shirt, white socks, and white Pumas. She was tan with prematurely gray hair. She was frankly a little lacking in the charm department. While Miss Goodhart took attendance in a rather gruff manner, Cynthia revisited in her head a lesson her mother had taught her many times, that if she looked and listened to a gruff person carefully, she might find Miss Goodhart was not really such a heavy-handed person, but was only very shy and was forcing herself to interact with people. Why would a shy person put herself in a position where she had to interact with hundreds of strangers? She leaned toward her friend Abigail Pierpont to whisper this very question. "Because she didn't want to be a nurse," Abigail whispered back. Cynthia looked at her. Abigail raised her hand around her mouth. "In her day, those were the only choices after college." Came back to Cynthia's ear again. "Or get married. But she doesn't seem like the marrying type, if you catch my drift." Cynthia caught her drift. "Is there a problem back there?" Miss Goodhart asked, craning her neck to see what all the whispering was about in the back row. After getting their small, square, orangey-red metal locker assignments, they were all on the bottom row to remind them that they were on the lowest status rung in the entire school. Miss Goodhart instructed them to change into their gym suits right there in front of their lockers, which instantly reduced them into nincompoops. Sandwiched between a larger girl and a skinny girl, Cynthia picked up her gym suit, slipped off her loafers, then her pants, hurriedly stepped into her gym suit and pulled it up, then practically hurled her blouse to the ground to quickly bring her gym suit up over her shoulders. Okay, done. Miss Goodhart was handing out field hockey sticks and shin guards in the equipment cage, the latter taking up a lot of time since a lot of the girls didn't know which side was right side up. Ready at last, Miss Goodhart stood in the doorway, blew her whistle, and they followed her through the gym and out a door to the fields. It was nice being outside. Cynthia could see the smoking area from here and wondered who might be out there. Maybe she could slip away at some point and bum a cigarette from someone. Miss Goodhart told 2 girls they were captains and to start picking their teams. Cynthia was immediately picked, not because she was such an outstanding athlete or anything, but because kids who knew her were trained to vote for her regardless of the contest. Which reminded her, Friday were nominations for class officers. She had no idea what class officers did. She'd always been part of student council. But in the 60s, one Brighton High student council had organized a student protest and shut down the school, and there hadn't been a student council since. Did she want to be president of the class? She wasn't sure. How much fun would it be to be the head of the lowest rung of the school? And she didn't like the high school to begin with. She had loved Dean. But this place was too hard to deal with. Too many students, too much going on. No doubt she'd like it better when she was a senior, but by then it might be too late. Everyone could hate her by then. That was nice of Betsy to say she had been funny. There was a girl from Clinton Junior High, Shauna Sinclair, who was really good at field hockey, and she demonstrated with Miss Goodhart how to do everything. How to face off, carry and pass the ball down the field, and how to make a shot on goal. Now it was their turn. Oh man, it was an unrelenting disaster. Despite Miss Goodhart's instructions about who was supposed to go where, the girls moved in on the ball as a herd, pushing and shoving and whacking each other all over the place, tripping and falling and howling in protest. Miss Goodhart blew her whistle so much she stopped removing it from her mouth, but kept it clenched between her teeth, alternating between blowing it and issuing orders out of the side of her mouth like she was Snidely Whiplash. Meanwhile, Shauna Sinclair languished around the goal they never got near. Because she was a nice girl, Cynthia noticed she took great care in turning around every time she burst out laughing. Oh, it was so pathetic. Cynthia thought Miss Goodhart must hit the bottle every night to forget her miserable job, but the worst was yet to come. Miss Goodhart announced they all must take showers before getting dressed, which turned them all into nincompoops again. But Cynthia and Abigail dashed ahead, figuring their only hope would be to dump their equipment and reach the locker room before Miss Goodhart. They stripped down to their underwear, wrapped themselves in their towels, and ran into the showers to wet their arms, legs, faces, and feet. They were back at their lockers, pretending they had just put their underwear back on, when the other girls arrived with Miss Goodhart, forcing them along with little toots on her whistle. She paused momentarily to look at Cynthia and Abigail, took in the wet towels on the floor, and looked at the damp fringes of their hair, and said around her whistle, "Excellent, girls." Cynthia's last class of the day was another study hall. She dawdled around the payphone, tempted to call Mr. Gagliardi, but edged toward Mrs. Grenville's office, where the guidance counselor was emerging with a student. "Hello, Cynthia," she said, stepping over to one of the bookcases to put college catalogs away. "Hi." Cynthia edged closer. She whispered, "You haven't heard anything about my friend Clay, have you?" "No," she said. She studied Cynthia a moment, slid the last catalog into the bookcase and murmured, "Let's see if there's any news," and headed for the front office. Cynthia stiffened when she heard Principal Mulin's voice and turned around, not wanting to appear like she's part of a conspiracy. In a minute, Mrs. Grenville came back. "He had surgery, but no one knows the outcome yet." Cynthia inhaled sharply, saying a quick prayer in her head. "I owe you, Mrs. Grenville," she said. A faint smile played around the guidance counselor's mouth as she said, "Yes, you do." Cynthia went into the library to see how much homework she could finish. She got the worksheet done for geometry and looked around. That jerk from the student paper was in here, Dickie Driscoll. She would never forgive him for scaring her like he did yesterday. Her English teacher, Mr. Conrad, was apparently the advisor for the Brighton Blue Wave, and if that guy wasn't on the paper, she might be interested. She thought it could be cool to do a student advice column under an assumed name. She doubted anyone would let her do it, though, since her first made-up letter would be from a girl who had been molested in the intersection between classes. When the final bell rang, she went outside and found Mimi sitting on a rock with two girls and a boy standing around her. She said hi to them, and Mimi asked if she knew the kids, which she didn't. They were juniors and had gone to Clinton. So Mimi introduced them and then excused herself, saying she had promised to do something with Cynthia, and they left. I don't think they smoke, Mimi said about her new friends as she brought out the larks. Maybe just not where they can be seen, Cynthia said. Maybe. Cynthia struck a match and held it out for Mimi, and then she lit hers. She was thinking maybe she liked the charcoal inn's filter taste. She also liked the deep maroon color pack. Mimi whispered, "There's that black boy." The lanky new student was walking down from the gym. He walked over to the side of the building, turned around, and then leaned back, bringing the sole of one foot to rest on the wall. "We should say hi," Cynthia said. Mimi followed her over. He only seemed to notice them when they were 2 feet away. They smiled, but he didn't. But he didn't scowl either. His face was impassive, as if he was waiting to find out what it was they wanted from him. "Hi, I'm Cynthia Schuyler." But she didn't put her hand out because he didn't look like he was particularly interested in knowing her. "And this is my friend, Mimi Watson." He let out a low whistle when he saw Mimi's face. "Oh, man, who got you?" "Car accident," Mimi said, smacking her fist into her hand. "Wow," he marveled, pushing off the wall. "Busted nose?" "Yes," she said, changing her stance, which brought his attention down to her candies. "Cool shoes," he said. "Thanks. What's your name?" "Lincoln Forbes." His eyes went to her cigarette. "Think I can bum one of those?" "Sure." Mimi gave him one, and Cynthia handed him her matches. He effortlessly struck a match and lit up. Oh, he knew how to smoke. "Thanks. We have to be 16 in this state, right?" "Yeah," Cynthia said. His eyes moved over to her. "Are you 16? "Not yet." "Me either," he said. He settled back against the wall, bringing his foot up again. He took a drag, and exhaled smoke. "Am I really the only black kid in this school?" Cynthia and Mimi nodded, taking drags on their cigarettes. Cynthia exhaled first. "How did you get here?" "Flying saucer," he said without changing expression. This made Cynthia and Mimi both laugh. He smiled for the first time. Wow, were his teeth white. "We were supposed to move to Stamford, but the house fell through, so we're renting from some friend of my grandparents." He took a deep drag. "I don't think my father has any idea of what he's done." "Where are you from?" Cynthia asked. "Chicago. My father's a pilot with Cross World Airlines." "Oh, that's cool," Mimi said. He bowed his head slightly. "I'm sorry, but every time I look at your face—" "Oh, it's okay," Mimi said. "Everybody cringes at first. Tell us about your dad being a pilot." "Oh, well, it was great in Chicago because we could go to Disney World for the weekend. And we used to go to Hawaii on vacation. But now he's flying corporate charters to Tehran. Paying him a fortune, but who the hell wants to go to Tehran?" They laughed. "Maybe you want to meet the Shah," Mimi said. "No." "That's a long way," Cynthia said. 6,000 miles, but he gets 3 days off after every flight. He took a drag. "But that means he's going to spend half his time in Tehran." He exhaled smoke again. Wait till he gets a load of this town. We're glad you're here, Lincoln, Mimi told him. We need some culture in this town. Cynthia saw the soccer team jogging onto the field. We're going to go watch the soccer team practice for a while. Do you want to come? He shrugged. Yeah, I guess. They put their cigarettes out in the garbage can, but Lincoln smoked his for a couple more steps and then flicked his butt like 100 miles. A friend of mine's filling in on JV, Cynthia told him. They just moved back from France. My dad stops in France sometimes to fill up. Is his father a pilot? I don't think so. Cynthia didn't think Phil had ever mentioned what his father did for a living. I bet he played a lot of soccer in France, Lincoln mused. Apparently. My dad went to college on a soccer scholarship, Lincoln told them. Really? Where? University of Manchester, in England. Is your dad English? Mimi asked. He's a British subject. He grew up in St. Vincent's Island in the Grenadines. Wow, Cynthia said, having no idea what the Grenadines were. Do you play soccer at all? Because they really need players. Come on, I'm still trying to figure out where the hell I am. They walked out to the soccer field and sat down on the grass. It was not very nice out. Andrew was leading the team around the field in a warm-up. Cynthia spotted Phil. He was wearing a bandana around his head, and his legs were really, really white. But otherwise, he looked pretty good. As Andrew led the players back to do calisthenics, player by player did a double take when they spied Lincoln. Cynthia thought that must feel awful. Uh-oh. Now Coach Griffin was walking over to them. He went right up to Lincoln and said, Are you interested in playing? Just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm athletic, Lincoln told him. Just because I'm white doesn't mean I'm dumb, Coach Griffin said in return. I can see from a mile away you're a runner. After a moment, Lincoln slowly stood up. That's right. What's your name? Lincoln told him. What grade are you in? 10th. Well, Lincoln, Coach said, I need players. Phil discreetly waved at Cynthia, and she smiled and waved back. Lincoln said, Dr. Mullen talked to me about cross-country. Coach Griffin made a face and batted the idea of cross-country out of the air. Work with us, and you'll have 20 friends at this school tomorrow. But you don't even know if I can play. His father went to college on a soccer scholarship, Bibi said. Lincoln turned and frowned at her. What? Bibi said. I'd much rather watch you play soccer. There's nothing to watch in cross-country. They shoot the gun and then everybody runs away. Coach Griffin chuckled, glancing back over his shoulder at the team. Okay, what do you say, Lincoln? Give it a shot? Give us a shot? When do I have to decide by? Now, Coach Griffin said. He held out his clipboard. Be my assistant coach today. Lincoln looked like he was afraid this was some kind of a trap. But then he shrugged, accepted the clipboard, and said, See ya, to the girls. As he walked to the field with Coach Griffin, all activity on the field ceased as all eyes focused on Lincoln. He's very brave, Mimi said. Cynthia agreed. She wasn't sure she could do what Lincoln was doing. They watched the team do drills, and Cynthia was thrilled to see how smoothly Phil moved. Evan was a lot faster than him, but Phil knew what he was doing out there, and she imagined Coach Griffin was relieved. She hoped it worked out. Lincoln, in the meantime, was walking around like he owned the place, periodically writing things down on his clipboard. As to whether he really had anything he needed to write down, she had no idea, but it was a really good look. Oh, they had to go. It was 10 after 3, and they had to get to the end of C Wing to meet her mother. She and Mimi waved goodbye to anyone on the field who might be watching and headed toward the school. So you had a good day? Cynthia asked Mimi. Oh, the best, Mimi said, stumbling a little. Cynthia reached out to steady her. Careful. My legs are tired, Mimi confessed. It's hard work being tall. Do you want to take those off? No way, Mimi said. I arrived 5'5" and I'm leaving 5'5". After a few steps, she added, but I may only be 5'3" tomorrow. Now as she walked, Mimi's arms started rotating around her as if they were part of the mechanism to propel her forward. Where are your books? Cynthia asked. I don't know and I don't care, Mimi told her. Now that was the Mimi of Cynthia's childhood. They walked out of C Wing and looked around. No mom yet. Didi stepped out of her station wagon and waved. Do you guys need a ride? Then she ducked her head back into her car for a moment and came out again. Not Fred buying the gas today. Cynthia laughed. Not Fred must have told Didi about his nickname. He must really like it. Thanks, but my mom's coming. Mary Ann Corbett swept past the left side of Mimi and stopped to stare at her. Then she saw Cynthia. So now you're finding friends in the junkyard? When Mimi moved to slap her across the face, Cynthia grabbed her by the wrist. Don't! Realizing what had almost just happened, Marianne took a step back and shouted, I could get you suspended for that, you know. Go ahead and try. Looming so tall with her scary face and everything, Mimi was really rather frightening. Because then you could repeat exactly what you said, and you'll be suspended too. It's not the same thing, Marianne said. It hurts the same, Mimi told her. Do you want me to tell you what I think of your body so you can find that out for yourself? Marianne was stunned. She finally huffed, Oh, screw you, Amelia Watson. Mimi shook Cynthia's hand off her wrist. You should have let me slap her. It was 3:30 now, and her mother still hadn't arrived. At 3:45, Cynthia saw Senora Cordova coming out of D-Wing. Buenos dias, señorita, she said to Cynthia. Hiciste un buen trabajo en clase hoy. Mimi said, Why? What did you do? Did you understand what she said? I didn't. She said you did a nice job in class today. Mimi smiled tentatively at the senora, her eyebrows rising in delight when she saw the red-spiked heels. ¿Tú hablas español, señorita? No, realmente. El francés es lo mío. Ah, je vois. Vous préférez le français? What was going on? Cynthia wanted to know. Now the senora was speaking French. Mimi laughed and said, Je suis used to maintenir la paix. Mimi leaned into Cynthia. My mother prefers French, but I'm just trying to keep the peace, I told her. You have an aptitude, the senora told Mimi. I love your outfit, particularly the shoes. The senora smiled, looking down briefly. Thank you. I like yours very much, too, although I don't think I could wear them. They continued chatting about shoes. Mimi and the senora. Cynthia was starting to feel a little jealous of how engaged the senora was with Mimi. Then Mimi asked her if she would consider being the faculty advisor for a fashion club. We already have 2 members, Mimi said, excited, and I know some other girls are interested. There might also be 1 or 2 boys, the senora said. Cynthia scoffed. You do not think boys should be allowed? The senora asked in such a way as to make Cynthia feel 2 feet tall. How will we go about finding other students who are interested, she asked Mimi. I'm sure Mr. Wolfgang B. Zollner would read an announcement for you, Cynthia said. Well, that's a thought, the senora said, but I'm not accustomed to being so formal with Wolfie. Wolfie? Cynthia cried. A lovely, wide smile emerged on the senora's face, and Cynthia realized she was teasing her. Mr. Smith suddenly appeared, carrying a briefcase in his right hand, lightly resting his left on the small of the senora's back. She asked her husband what he thought of a fashion club, and he said, I'm afraid you're singing to the wrong choir, dear. And then he asked Cynthia if she'd given any more thought to the radio club. Cynthia heard the honk of a horn behind her and turned around. It was Mrs. Fitzgerald driving their new station wagon. Cynthia waved and walked over. The window slid down. Half of Mrs. Fitzgerald's face was covered by huge sunglasses like Jackie O wore. Cynthia's mother had a pair of tortoiseshell ones, but Mrs. Fitzgerald went for the thick, glossy black ones with the wide panels. Listen, your mother is tied up with something, and she asked me to dash over and pick you girls up. Cynthia went over to tell Mimi. The Senora was giving Mimi her home phone number. Wow, Mimi said as they approached the Fitzgerald's car. It was silver and long. Nice car, Mrs. Fitzgerald, Mimi said, climbing in the back seat. It is nice, isn't it? She asked, looking around. We got a break on it because Oldsmobile's a client of Mr. Fitzgerald. Cynthia closed the passenger seat door. It's different from your Vista Cruiser. Bigger. It's called the Custom Cruiser. Mr. Fitzgerald thought the name up. Let's cruise, Mimi suggested. I'd love to, Mrs. Fitzgerald said, backing out, but I promised Liz I'd bring you right home. Mimi yawned. I need a nap anyway. Cynthia looked at Mrs. Fitzgerald. Where is Mom? Oh, she just needed to get a few things done. Cynthia studied Mrs. Fitzgerald, suspicious. Something was up. Mrs. Fitzgerald looked at Mimi in the rearview mirror. How was your first day back, Mimi? Good, Mimi said, yawning again. Why isn't Annabelle with you? Cynthia asked. She's at a riding lesson. Annabelle had been taking riding lessons forever, and once a year Cynthia attended the big June show to watch her friend ride in two events, equitation on the flat and equitation over jumps. They were always sure Annabelle would win if only they brushed the club horse assigned to her, Polly Princess, for just one more hour, or more carefully braided Polly Princess's hair. But the best Annabelle ever did was third place. But this past June, Annabelle had been registered in the wrong event, and she won something called a Good Hands Medal, which turned out to be one of the most sought-after prizes in the equestrian world. Is Mom still at church? Mrs. Fitzgerald didn't answer right away. Then she just repeated that her mother had called her and asked her if she could just dash to the school to pick them up. Then she looked at Mimi in the rearview mirror again. When are your parents coming home, Mimi? I don't know, she said. I'm not sure anyone knows where they are. Cynthia turned around to say something, but Mrs. Fitzgerald took the words right out of her mouth. What do you mean no one knows where they are? Last I heard from Daddy, they were talking about going to Paris. No one's heard from them since. That must be nice, Mrs. Fitzgerald said, sounding a little depressed. One of the problems with Mr. Fitzgerald's very high-paying job was there always seemed to be an emergency with a client. Cane's Foods hated this. Cane's Foods wanted something like that. And if they didn't get that right away, they were jumping to J. Walter Thompson. As a result, the Fitzgeralds rarely traveled very far from New York City. When they pulled into their driveway, Cynthia noticed the garage doors were closed, which was strange at this time of the day. She thanked Mrs. Fitzgerald for picking them up and raced up the back stairs to the kitchen door, pretending not to hear Mrs. Fitzgerald calling something to her. She dumped her books and purse on the kitchen table and called, "Hi, Mom," and squatted to greet Ashette when she tore around the corner from the den. The house was silent. Ashette whined a little. Cynthia took her to the door and let her out. Mimi and Mrs. Fitzgerald were slowly coming up the stairs, neither one looking very happy. Something was wrong. The telephone rang and Cynthia snatched it off the wall. Hello? The call sounded as though it was from very far away, and a hoarse, faint voice said something. Hello? Cynthia said, raising her voice as Mimi and Mrs. Fitzgerald came inside. Can you speak up, please? I can barely hear you. A raspy voice said, still sounding very far away, "Is this any better?" "A little. Who is this?" "It's Clay." "Clay!" she cried. "Oh, Clay! It's so good to hear your voice." "It's Clay," she said to Mimi. "Tell him I said hi," Mimi said. "Oh, Clay," Cynthia said on the verge of tears. "How are you?" "I'm not so good," he said. And then the line went dead. "Hello? Hello?" There was a click and then a dial tone. "We got disconnected." "He'll call back," Mimi said encouragingly. "I hope so," Cynthia said, hanging up the phone. "I asked him how he was, and he said not good." "Oh, God, please," she said, holding her forehead a moment. She thought, please, please, please let Clay be all right. She dropped her hand. "Where is my mom?" "She should be calling any minute," Mrs. Fitzgerald said. Mimi frowned at Mrs. Fitzgerald and turned to Cynthia. "She's in Washington because your father had a heart attack." Wow. Is Mr. Schuyler going to be all right? What is happening to Clay? And is he going to be all right? Are the police going to track down whoever hurt Clay in the snack bar? And who is it on the football team that burned a drug dealer in New York City? Are the Whitakers going to press charges against Victor Wronski this week or not? How is Teddy Hamilton going to do in front of the scout from Dartmouth? And where are Mimi's parents? This is the last episode of season 1. After 800 pages of script and 17 hours of recording, we've only made it through a week at Broughton High, so we may have to have 100 seasons of the class of 74 before we get to graduation. That period when we went to high school in 1971, so much was happening in the country, culturally, politically, socially. It's a fascinating time. And the reason why this story is taking forever is because I want everybody to remember what was going on back then and to show younger people what their heritage is of their parents. You know, why are they the way they are? Why are there so many liberals who graduated from high school in 1974? There's a reason. Not all of us are liberals, but most of us are social liberals because of the times that we grew up in. You've been amazing companions on this journey. And you've been at my side while I've been writing fiction for the first time after 10 years. It's taught me an awful lot about what needs to happen so that season 2 can be delivered on schedule and more smoothly. Because this is what I want to do, you guys. I want to write this story and hang out with you guys. What we've done is we've created a clubhouse. Right now, there's the Detention Club for $5 a month. Of course, it's called the Detention Club. What else did you think it was going to be called? It's still under construction. And I want to thank all those members at the club already. After every new episode, you'll be invited to a private question and answer period with me. You can tell me what you like, what you don't like, or ask any questions about how certain things came about or why I did this or that. I want you to be able to talk to me. You can find the clubhouse for the class of 74 by searching Patreon, Patreon, Laura Van Warmer, or Patreon Class of 74, and it'll take you to the clubhouse. Guess what? Somebody already signed up in the Rich Kids Club. I couldn't believe it. But instead of thanking him, he wanted me to say, quote, "Anonymous says, my stories remind him that we grew up at best time, in the best place, with the best people. Okay, now I'm teary-eyed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to close with we don't drink and drive anymore. Ever. But I do want you to have fun. God bless you and keep you safe and as happy as you can be, day at a time.